Afternoon all, I make it 1 o'clock. Welcome councillors, members of the staff, members of the press and public. I make it 1 o'clock. Welcome to a full council meeting on Thursday, the 1st of August 2024, the Lake Monica Centre. There are no apologies yet. Are there leaves of absence?
For the 7th of November. The 7th of November.
Raise our voices. Apparently acoustics in this room is not the best, so you can keep that up, councillors. Any more?
9th to the 14th of August, sorry.
I think it was
Any further? Okay, I move that the requests for leave of absence be approved. A seconder. Thank you, Nikki. All those in favour?
Aye.
Motion carried. Declarations of conflict of interest?
No.
None. No matters lying on the table. Special announcements, there are none. Public forum to today. First off, Michaela. Yeah, all good. 3 minutes. Time's yours. Whatever you start.
Kia ora, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the diversification plan. My name is Michaela Blacklock, and David Wallace has asked me to read his comments on his behalf as he's had to urgently go to Auckland. They are as follows. I live in Wanaka and the managing director of a boutique investment bank with offices in Wanaka, Christchurch, Wellington and Auckland. I'm the chair of Startup Queenstown Lakes and a founding board member of Mainland Angel Investors, which operates across Queenstown Lakes, Southland, Otago and now Christchurch. Previously, I was the chair of Snow Sports New Zealand based here in Wanaka. Why do I freely give my time to those local organisations? The answer is why I support the diversification plan. My key driver is about job creation. Our district has 4 jobs based around tourism and construction. The former are low paying and both are highly impacted by economic cycles. How many of you are aware of the statistics we're seeing in the ski industry? Numbers are significantly down. Pre-bookings for Coronet Peak and Remarkable Ski School were 25% down on last year. Skier days will be significantly down. Restaurant numbers are down. Usual visitors have gone to Europe or are staying away. The economy is biting like COVID did. Further, our district is also filling up with retirement refugees leaving the big cities of Auckland and Christchurch and coming here to be active relaxers, keen to use the infrastructure but only pay via their rates bill. I'm lucky, 2 of my 3 children live here with great jobs. The third wants to, but can he find a role when he returns from London working for several tech startups? Currently, no. We need to take steps to create meaningful jobs for businesses that can export from the district. We'll never have employees with big teams here, but we can lead the development of IP, leveraging off our district-wide strengths and environment. Did you know that Te Whatu Ora has about 20 management and policy roles in an office in Remarkable's Park? These are not hospital related. Those 20 people are on above average salaries that are likely to be 2 to 3 times higher than the average tourism and hospitality worker's salary. They're here as the Southern DHB has a small office that others realised they could work from as well. After the merger of the DHBs, there was no plan to attract them, just luck. First Table now has 14 people out of a global team of 24. Loaded Reports has 12 out of 17 based here. These 2 entities are exemplars of locally grown businesses creating jobs, raising capital and paying above average salaries in comparison to others in the district. Apply the multiplier effect to nearly 50 people on above average salaries and that starts to make the local economy sustainable. The tourism and hospitality sector would need double or even triple that number of people to have the same impact. I understand the district is expected to grow by 50,000 people over the next 10 years or so. That's about 15,000 households and probably about 20,000 jobs. Diversification is about creating these jobs. This plan will make sure those jobs are high value, not just more of the same. If we don't do something, balancing your budget is going to be an impossible task, and only the mega wealthy households will be able to afford their rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take your time. 3 minutes or something to walk it up, Jay. When you're ready.
Kia ora koutou katoa. As you can see, I am a bit banged up, but I am in a much better shape than our planet. Globally, June was the warmest June ever. It was the 13th month in a row to break temperature records. And in July, we beat the warmest day record for 2 days in a row. Locally, New Zealand sea waters are warmer than they have ever been, threatening both our marine wildlife and our future ability to eat fish. This also caused a season of extremes. Floods, fires, droughts everywhere, so many that we are becoming numb to the news. State of emergency in California due to giant fires, hundreds dying in a mudslide in Ethiopia, Typhoon Gaimi causing a massive oil spill and floods in Southeast Asia. But the worst really is that humans seem to have just accepted it. We are just adapting while still refusing to face our responsibilities. Our Olympians are training to be able to cope with extreme heat. Paris is not supposed to be a tropical weather. In many cities around the world, pavements are becoming dangerously hot and can literally cause 30 degrees burn. But what do they do about it? Nothing. They just stay indoors and crank up the air conditioning. Well, unless the power goes up, then the emergency rooms get swamped. In Europe, tourists are just heading north because it is too warm in the south. The zombie apocalypse has arrived, with a brain-dead humanity slowly adapting to the end of the world without ever daring to face the causes of the problem. We live in a ski town, so some of you might have been to Jasper in Canada. It is now burned to the ground. Danielle Smith, Alberta's premier, was struggling to contain her tears at the press conference covering the fire. But she's a climate change denier. She fought hard against national policies trying to cut Canada's emissions. She is a climate criminal. She bears an outsized responsibility for the destruction of her own province, and she will be judged by history, as we all will. We do not believe that there are many outright climate change deniers in this council. Some of you even voted for the declaration of climate and ecological emergency 5 years ago. But in an emergency, we're supposed to act. And what has happened in the last 5 years? Nothing meaningful. This council is still supporting the expansion of our largest climate polluters, or airports. We still see fossil fuel-powered buildings receiving consent everywhere in the district. There are no efforts made to discourage the use of fossil fuel vehicles in our streets. And we might even end up with a McDonald's, one of the most polluting businesses in the world, in Wanaka. Hopefully that one will not get consent, though. To care is not enough, only what we do matters. We all know what needs to be done, but we need to do it. We need to boycott fossil fuels, and we need to boycott activities that emit greenhouse gases, including flying for no good reasons and McDonald's. Thank you.
Okay. Confirmation of agenda. I move that the agenda be confirmed with withdrawal of parts 1 and 3 of the Chief Executive's report, change declarations, and removal of part 2 of the recommendation. We have a mover. Thank you, Matt. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against?
No,
You're an
a
aye?
late eye.
Aye. Motion carried. Confirmation of minutes of meeting of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 27th June 2024. We've got a request from Councillor Gladding to make the following amendments. I think we've all seen those circulated.
I haven't actually, but I assume it's. Yeah, mine's just my name is there's white, not Whitehead.
Yeah, that's part of it. Thank you. Any further? Okay, well, I move that the minutes of the public part of the ordinary meeting of the Queenstown Lakes District Council held on 27 June 2024 as amended be confirmed as a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Barry. All those in favour? Aye. Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Right. Item 1, papers, economic diversification plan. Peter and Michelle. Hey.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I think the thing that I've been dwelling on is that this we sit here representing quite a large group of people that have been involved in the plan, both prior to the plan in terms of efforts that have gone into the past, and I think about the Cube and other work that's gone on to sort of build diversification work prior to this plan, but the expertise and the insights that have been offered along the way. And you know, as Michaela said, David and a lot of others put in volunteer time to do this work. And I think the other thing to recognise is that there are entrepreneurs that have been working in the diversification space and running businesses in the district and still do, that are working on the edge really. They're outside of that construction and tourism core. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that they in many ways are the sort of signposts for what can happen. So I think about John Wickstrom and Sam Hazeldine and people who are doing things that wouldn't naturally fit, but they are in some ways the poster children for this work, and so we really appreciate their input. And lastly, for me, I'd just like to thank Ren, who has been on the team for a little over a year now and has worked extensively on the plan, and Michelle for her support along the way. So happy to take the report as read.
Better questions, councillors?
Thank you. Last time we got together about this, I raised the, I suppose, concern that we focus always on diversifying from tourism and you know, hold up tech as the example, and I sort of expressed the risk that the building and construction industry is so dominant, particularly in our community, and employs so many people, that is actually a bigger risk to us than, you know, tourism, the arse falling out of tourism. So yeah, can you just speak to that and whether the significant changes were made to the report like that?
Sure. Yeah, we had that feedback, and on page 8, some of the economic diversification challenges, that first graph, we altered that graph to include construction and tourism to show the dominance of both. So I think fundamentally the diversification works for both, from both tourism and construction. But you're right, those two industries are the core that we need to be careful about both of them.
Yeah, and my point at the time was like we shouldn't lose sight of that, because that is both a big industry for us, but a massive risk, because it's the one that's more vulnerable actually to decline than tourism in the long term, more ups and downs. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you if you could just speak to the film component of the diversification, with the view that Silverlight may not be happening, and if that has an impact or not, and what it means for council in that direction.
Sure. So film infrastructure has been on the cards and off the cards for decades almost now, I think. There's been lots of talk of studios, multiple proposals. I think the reality of the industry, you know, if infrastructure was in place, it would change the industry, but fundamentally the industry has changed anyway. So just to give some background, so council used to host Film Otago Southland. We didn't pay them, but we hosted them within council. They had 2 employees, and then in 2020 we did a review and actually created an in-house film office. And one of those employees, Carly Scott, came across and runs that office. But Film Otago Southland still exists, but it doesn't have any employees. So we're still. That's important, because when productions come to town, they don't necessarily want to just film in one place, they'll film across the whole region. So the ability to be able to help them work regionally is really important. The interesting thing with infrastructure is I think that while the day it happens, we will celebrate, we can't be reliant on it. And I think the exciting thing about the industry is I've seen it mature, whereby we used to wait for big movies and TV commercials to turn up, and people would make good money working for those. But now we've got production companies doing TV series in the district. So Remarkable Place to Die is just wrapped, and that's gone really well, and that gives a lot more repeat work. So it actually makes a career in that industry much more feasible. The other thing that Carly's been doing is working with Wanaka filmmakers who do a lot more adventure filming and documentary work, and working with them. So rather than waiting for scripted work to turn up, working with those who are doing that work already. So I think it's the industry's more complicated than it seems on the surface. I think, you know, the days of waiting for those big movies to turn up, I think when they do turn up, we'll make the most of it, but we shouldn't be waiting for them.
Big, Lisa.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the report. And to me, it says a lot, but for others, can you tell me how far have we come in this space?
Yeah, I think we've come a long way. I was dwelling on, I've been in my role now for about 7 years, and back in 2015, so I started in 2017. There was good work going on in Wanaka and the Cube and the Cell, but apart from that, there was little else going on. Pilmataga Southland, but I think a lot of this work has matured, and I think the other exciting thing for me is that there's a lot of other people putting their hand up now. So Startup Queenstown Lake has 3 part-time staff, but has a volunteer board. We've got Technology Queenstown, which has emerged and have been out fundraising and are in the process of appointing a CEO at the moment. So there's a lot more. I mean, I think the exciting thing for me in this plan is the logos on the inside of the front page as much as the words, because I think probably COVID highlighted the vulnerability of our economy. And I think out of that, there's a whole lot of people who have put their hand up in a way that may not have happened without it. So in some ways, it's probably heightened the awareness. But you know, there's work going on in post-tech, so that's the work around the software companies that supply solutions for hospitality and tourism. We've also got Amos, who's doing some work around product design, and we heard from Cody at the workshop. I was talking to Amos the other day. He said he thinks there's probably between 15 and 20 businesses in that space in the district. So, you know, I think we're becoming more focused on where the opportunities lie. And I think the exciting thing with Host Tech and the product development is that they sit really nicely alongside tourism. So we're not trying to compete with tourism, we're trying to leverage off it. And that really lines up with international research that shows that the best place to diversify is alongside what you've already got.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to be a tourism advocate, so it's good to hear that it's actually working alongside the industries we already have. Peter, just one question around the plan and how it integrates with sort of the wider regional economic plans and strategies, and maybe even the national one, if you could speak to that. How we're not sitting out in our own little silo.
Sure. Yeah, I'm part of the regional economic development group. The government always wants regions to come up with a plan. And that's hard across Otago because you drive for about an hour and you're in a completely different economy almost. So that's always been a challenge, and continues to be. That's the reality of it. I think one of the exciting things, and one of the partners that's on the inside of the front page, is Otago University. And they are showing a much stronger commitment to this part of the district. And I think that bodes really well. We've got a workshop coming up next week where the alumni office is going to be part of that. And again, that's, I think, got massive potential as to how do we tap into that network for the good of the district, but for the good of the region. Nationally, I think that we've got a part to play as well. So in terms of tourism, I think that the technology work and helping the tourism operators to take up that technology is a productivity play that can help increase the productivity of that industry. And the other thing we're working with is the World of Connections, which is an enabler in here, I think will have spillover benefit far beyond just the district. So as people come into our district, they may have an interest in what's going on locally, but also they'll bring expertise that will be useful nationally as well. So that's part of our story to the central government, is that they can make more use of the district in terms of the expertise that flows through the place for the good of businesses, whether those businesses are here or anywhere else in the country.
Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks, Peter and team. Awesome to see the plan get to this point after all your hard work. So cheers, guys. And you know, I'm a little apologetic to raise a little bit of a flag at this point, but a little bit of feedback, I suppose, from some of the contributors to the report as well, in talking about our value created selling beyond the district. And the concern that I've had raised, my question is around how do we protect our turf, if you like, building that framework where we foster the diversification that's already here, and empower And in the space I'm talking about, Peter, is events. So we've sort of got a bit of a culture where we seed events and set them free. The concern I've had around the diversification plan is we're doing that a bit well, right? We're seeding these events and we're losing them because we're not fostering a framework that empowers our diversification of business to remain here and operate easily. And I'm wondering what our moves are in the future to look at our bureaucratic process and our unintended consequences of some of our policies like health and safety, waste minimisation, transport. You know, we've got these great events. Long lunch we've lost. Matariki is under threat. The gold panning competition is moving to Cromwell because we're too bureaucratic and add too much cost to this is the feedback I'm hearing. So I want to know, how do we stop creating our products that are so good that they're easier to operate somewhere else? You know, people go, this is a great thing we've diversified here, but it's too hard to continue it in the district. We're going to go and run it elsewhere. How do we, long-winded question, but how do we foster that framework of empowering what we have seeded here to remain here?
Okay, I'll answer that first off. Firstly, I think then this is no reflection on any of the events that you've mentioned here, but I would suggest that some of the consequences are intended rather than unintended, and some of the event organisers have not been able to respond to them. So, for example, in the waste minimisation space, we've had a very clear steer from council that this is really important to us and we want to drive good behaviours. Some event organisers decide that's, you know, competitively speaking, they can deliver it more cheaply in Central Otago or another district where that kind of requirement is not put on them. That is for council to steer and shape that. Similarly, in the health and safety space, we have some huge obligations in that field and there's a significant risk. So when we are making those calls, they may feel bureaucratic, some of our event organisers, but actually we're really happy to step them through it to make it as helpful as possible and as clean as possible. And where that's not happening operationally for whatever reason, we want to know about it. So, you know, I would like to suggest that maybe through alternative escalations, we might be able to remedy and smooth off some of these edges. I think I would caution against council making significant shifts in that space because I think we have been very clear on some of our requirements. But very happy to take that feedback on board and look back at some of these specifics that you've raised. I would also just tell you as well that we're currently doing a lot of work in the event space to revisit our policy, the way the teams operate internally. We've done a big review and actually there's some significant efficiencies coming through there. So I think our event organisers will see some improvements over the sort of next 6 to 12 months. There's a considerable piece of work in the space. But equally, we're starting to shift our view and we're going to be recommending we shift our view as an organisation around the role that events play. Historically, you know, we've had an event strategy, for example, the outcome of which was to be an event-friendly place and to have more events. Are we at a point in our maturity as a district and as an organisation where we want to say, actually, events are the tool to achieving broader outcomes as opposed to an end in and of themselves? And I think that's something that will be coming to a councillor workshop soon to be able to really kick that around and understand what role events play here. And how we mitigate our risk and make sure that we have events that serve our community and our economy in the way that we want them to. We don't actually have to be the recipient of events that turn up, book a space and just happen without any say-so. So I think events is a really big topic and that we will be coming back to over the next 6 months. Peter, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think operationally there's been some amazing work done by the business improvement team around how we give our permits, how the process of doing that, and they're doing a lot of work on streamlining that. So that will get better, and probably an example of that is the Film app. So they did very much the same sort of work with film and looked at all the processes, and then we've put in a piece of software, and the industry has been really positive about that. One more positive in the events space is the Smarty grants. So the way that the events funding is allocated. And Jan came back from a workshop at Hawea the other day and spontaneously had operators, event organisers saying how much they appreciated that process. So I think there's change in place, but the other reality is we have more events come to us than we can cope with. So we have limited number of venues and places like that, and we have to balance that with also the community use of those venues. So there is there is a tension there that is real because of the fact that we're simply limited with venues, and obviously we're a place where lots of events want to be held. So it's a little bit, we're almost in quite a unique situation compared to probably most other places in the country whereby any, more events is great, but actually there are sort of natural limits for us. But yeah, I think, as Michelle said, there's a lot of operational work, but we're also going to be bringing a policy for discussion with you too to update
So
it.
what I'm hearing is we might be able to have a workshop around
Absolutely.
the space.
Yeah.
Because I think it is those unintended consequences when we're losing things like Matariki because you can't toast a marshmallow on a stick, you don't make enough money or whatever it might be.
Yeah, so there's a whole lot of work being done that we'll be bringing back to council.
through fostering a framework to empower what we already have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Nikki, and then Alan.
Thank you. Yeah, mine's more around cost. I feel like all of these plans link together. We're doing a lot of stuff in a lot of spaces, and one of the things within the economic diversification, I feel like we're pushing up against unaffordable housing and we're pushing up against natural growth and tourism, and that's kind of a constraint. And we put this plan in place that's kind of like trying to push against that. Sometimes I wonder if the value for money piece is removing some of the constraints. So anyway, the question is around costs. You've said there's no financial implications for the first year. Presumably that's because we're staffed and that's budgeted for. Is that correct? What I'm interested in is how we, one, are going to measure bang for buck, value for money for each of these projects. And the other question is related to that. How are you going to daylight the costs for the councillors so that every annual plan and long-term plan, we can look at what your individual programs within this are costing and understand which ones are that really good value for money and which ones we might want to pull back on. Because at the moment, we don't daylight those OPEX program costs in any of our planning documents.
That's a really good question. So if I relate that back to the way that we deal with this with the climate and biodiversity plans, just around how frequently we service the full document. But what we do is we have a program that basically goes item by item, action by action that's in the plan, so that we can track progress for a start and how are things moving, how they're changing. But that's how we also break down our OPEX budget into each of those initiatives. Now, I think the thing is with a plan like this, we can do a similar exercise. The reality is that with this many people in the mix, you have to be a little bit opportunistic from time to time. So we can sit at the start of the year, as we do, and say, right, here's our OPEX budget, let's break it out into these programs here. But then someone comes and knocks on the door and says, hey, have I got a deal for you? We're going to start doing X, Y, and Z. And that's when we look at the program and go, okay, well, let's pursue this activity here then faster because there's an avenue here and a partner that will accelerate things. So there is always a little bit of movement in the ED space, but I would envisage that our next steps with this, I mean, you can see the year one plan, I think is at appendix 1B. That plan will now go to our partners. Okay, do you agree with this? These are the things we're going to look at over the course of the year. Who's going to put in what money? And then we use our budget to allocate and partner with people.
So what I'm looking for is a way for councillors to see clearly when you're setting budgets, so that we can either increase or reduce, and also somewhere for the community to see that, so we can get feedback, because this is a big plan and there's a lot of projects and it's very, very hard to see where the money's going, and therefore it's very, very hard to see whether it's value for money and whether, for example, the money wouldn't be better spent doing an RVA plan change so that we could open up more housing, and then diversification may happen more naturally. Then I don't know that that's the answer, but the point is that we need to have oversight of the costs, so that we can make decisions as a governance group.
I think one thing we haven't landed in this is exactly the frequency of reporting in the format. So what we were going to propose, if this came up as a question around how we'd report, is similarly to the DMP, we come back every 6 months. And I think in that reporting format, we can address the complex where we're seeing value and where we're not. Obviously, there is a line here in terms of operational management within the detail here, but I think you're hitting on something with the return on investment component. So we want to see what you need to see as governors, where you feel the value is actually sitting and where the value is being built. So we'll take that away as an action to think about how we can actually do that really meaningfully and openly.
last question, could we write that in as an amendment to the recommendation so that we definitely have 6 monthly reporting, including.
You don't have to answer that. That's a decision for council,
Well, you
not
just
for
need,
officers.
no, we
Okay.
can decide it.
All right, I really like the plan, it's very exciting, having 2 young children, knowing that there might be an opportunity for them to stay, if they chose to. My question is around the year 1 action plan and how you decided what was in the year 1 action plan, because there's quite a few bits that aren't, and I guess following on, who checks that it's all done, what's in the plan, because it's obviously not all our responsibility, there's different leads.
Yeah, so the action plan, so we've already gone out to the other players or the other partners. And so you'll see names against quite a lot of those things that aren't us. And that's probably just coming back. But in terms of reporting, this is a collaborative piece of work. And so we can report on our part in it, but we are part of a bigger mix. So yeah, they've already signed up to those, we've gone out to them and said, look, what are you planning to do out of the plan in the next 12 months? And so there is I think the thing about this plan is this is a long-term game. And you're right, it's a mix of hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure and the tension between those things, because there are opportunities and people who would like to bring business to town, and then they get into the realities of housing and infrastructure and those sorts of things. So there's a natural tension between those things, and we're going to have to keep balancing, trying to work out how we get that balance right, because I don't think having all of one is the answer, but trying to work out what the right balance is I think an ongoing challenge, really. So yeah, we've gone out already. In terms of what we put in the 12-month plan, we've put in things that we know we can deliver on our side, and others have done the same. I think we will work on a 3-year plan with those other partners. But this was really to just put a line in the sand and say, hey, look, there are already some really good things going on, and people are making commitments, including our group.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to your point around ongoing role, our role in this is the coordination. So understanding who's doing what, when, how, and if that would be our reason to remain at work and go.
And just to pick up on the children aspect, I think that's absolutely what it's about. I was talking to somebody the other day, and she said that she's a long-term local. She said, I won't be able to continue living here because when my kids grow up, I want to be close to my grandchildren. And she doesn't see it, at the moment she's going, my assumption is they won't be able to stay. So that's what fundamentally this is all about.
Through the chair, just a couple of questions. Just following on from the money guide. In round figures, have you got what the operational budget is for next year for your team?
Well, in terms of project funding outside of salaries, it's probably about 500k.
The second question was to do with your mention in there. I don't understand too much about this. The Queenstown Economic Transformation and Resilience Fund that was provided after COVID, $20 million for Research and Innovation Hub at Markles Park. Can you give us an update on that fund? Was it all spent? And I see it was stopped in 2024. And is there any possibility of any future central government money along these lines for economic transformation and resilience?
You brought up one of my great frustrations. That fund was created by Minister Nash over COVID. $20 million, $2 million of that was allocated to administration of it as central government, so we had $18 million. The rules around it was that it was effectively only able to be spent on loans, equity, or underwrites, so there were no grants. And they effectively were saying if you could raise the money in other ways, then go and do that. So the government was only interested in things where you couldn't raise the money in other ways, but then when it got to their criteria, they used a very commercial view of it. And so basically they brought a commercial view to things that weren't commercial. So in the end, they invested in 2 things. They put some money into the virtual production studio that's going to be going into Remarkables Park, and also became an investor in Loaded, which is one of the hospitality technology companies. And apart from that, they didn't find anything that suited their criteria. And then with the new government, they closed it down. So my frustration is that we tried to convince them numerous times that their criteria wasn't fit for purpose, but they stuck to their guns, and the end result was they couldn't find anything to invest in.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, Peter.
That's where some of these
Frustrating
ideas have
as
come
well,
from.
don't worry. Okay, questions over. Do I have a mover? Anyone? Thank you, Melissa. And the second, Lisa. Open for discussion. Any discussion, councillors?
I'd like to propose an amendment.
Proposal.
So the amendment would be, as I discussed before, just adding a point 4 to the recommendation to require officers to report to the full council every 6 months on the implementation of and costs associated with the economic development strategy.
Yeah, seconded by councillor Whitehead. Discussions, councillors?
Well, sorry, during the chair, question, when you say economic development strategy, or diversification plan,
Oh, sorry, yes, economic diversification plan.
the other question is, through Michelle's
So,
department, other plans, they report to council or to a committee? Just wondering what the level of reporting where it should be. This comes under, I say, planning and strategy type area. So it's just a question of how we being consistent with the reporting of other such plans.
So require officers to report to full council. So it's in the resolution as full council.
Yeah, that's what I'm questioning. Is that not correct?
so I can,
So
I
it's-
didn't actually-
no. Well, this is motion.
This is-
Officers have no say on this. It's
Right,
us.
well,
Yeah. So at the moment, as the
we can have,
motion stands, it's full council.
Okay.
and we can have a discussion about it, and if you want, we can try and change it, but if Esther and I agree, but the reason,
Hang on. I've opened it to discussion. Do you want to use a?
well, I was thinking of speaking to the.
No, well, Lyle's spoken now. I'm just going to open it out to everyone else because once you talk again, that's it. We go to vote. Okay. Anyone else? Just check it.
Okay,
Well,
so,
Oh, hang on. And
Okay.
yes, if you want to.
So, just going back to Lyle's point, I think as long as it's not being reported elsewhere on a more regular basis, which I don't think it is, then it would be appropriate for it to come to full council every 6 months. So,
Okay.
just sharing that. Don't know if anyone else wants to.
I'm happy to just hit on it now. Look, the reason I've written full council was to do with the costs, and so, we've just been through the draft long-term plan, and we don't have a lot of visibility of program-based OPEX costs. So I would like the whole full council to understand what the costs of some of these programs are, rather than just limiting it to planning and strategy. I've got no issue if it wants to be reported as well to planning and strategy, but I think at least it needs to come back to full council 6 monthly to understand, especially because it's in the early days and we don't understand what things are going to look like, and there is no information about financials in this report.
Okay. So before I put the amendment to the vote, I've got the motion before us. Go Jane.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've got through the chair all the detail. Require officers to report to full council every 6 months on the economic diversity.
Oh, on the implementation of
Yeah,
and costs associated with the economic diversification plan.
So-
yeah, I've got that.
Thanks,
Okay,
Jane.
I'll read that out again before. So this will be an amendment to the motion. So it'll be 4, require officers to report to full council every 6 months on the implementation and costs associated with the economic diversification plan. All those in favour? Up high, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Against? Motion carried. Right. Now we're moving on to the substantive motion.
do we get to discuss?
Yep. Now we're going to do that one. And remind me again who moved those? Lisa and Melissa. So you happy to keep continuing?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Open for discussion. Where you go, Matt?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment then. It's really this plan is a collaboration with all these brands that are on this draft plan, and council, yes, they need to drive and they need to be the glue that sticks it all together, but the market is going to be the one that delivers this. And I think the market has been waiting for a long time for someone to pull this together. So I just want to congratulate you on the great work you've done. I know it's taken a hell of a long time to actually get to this point. So well done.
Just on the reporting and possible financial implications, is that not covered under item 39? There are no immediate financial applications from endorsement of the diversification plan.
Oh, that vote's already being had, sorry, councillor. So, yeah. Go.
I wrote a statement, so apologies if it sounds like a birthday card, but I collect my thoughts. Without question, COVID became a turning point for so many. Whether you lost your job, got stuck on the other side of the world, or just had a second to rethink what you want out of life. It also exposed this district for how fast and loose it can be, in the words of Hamish and Andy. When a huge labour force lose their jobs, they had to leave, and shortly after a shortage of workers, the town didn't work for visitors, and it's forever been fractured, in my view. And I was really excited to run for this position because I saw this little window of opportunity for Queenstown Lakes to evolve and have more substance, to be honest. For locals to have more options for meaningful work that inspired and challenged us and afforded us the luxury to live here long enough to sow real roots in the community, to Melissa's point. The economic diversification plan tends to epitomise this ambition, so it had some big expectations to meet, sorry, Peter. And no matter what words are on the pages, it was always doomed to be an understatement of this new wave of energy I've had the privilege to be a part of. The innovators, entrepreneurs, and the visionaries. I've really pushed on this plan out of sheer enthusiasm, and I'm comforted to say that despite it not seeming as sexy as the Carbon Zero 2030 thing, the objectives in here are sophisticated, mature, and calculated given our role in this. The data is appropriately nuanced and well captured, and I'll forever see the stark difference between high caliber and high contributing individuals. Congratulations on getting us together with an enormous amount of people and organizations support behind you. I'm honoured to add one more by endorsing this today.
Thank you.
Comments before I go to Lisa? Hang on. Who moved it? You remind me.
I did, but she did speak.
Yeah, gotcha. So Lisa, and then it's Mel after that.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment as to, again, in support of the plan, and also as to why I voted around the it coming to full council on a 6-monthly basis. I know how quickly 6 months turns over and the workload associated with all the stakeholders that you have in this. And I pick up on Councillor Cox's comment that perhaps this sits within a planning space or one of our other committee spaces. And I really took heart that you're going to workshop different aspects of this as you have with the film sector, and know that we've got a plan moving forward. So my original comment about wanting to almost apply a Ministry of Bureaucracy approach to this, of going, how do we strip out things to create a fostering framework and empowering you to get on with it, as I'm reluctant to put more constraints around that bureaucratic process. So while I hear where my other councillors are coming from about being excited and wanting to keep our eye on the ball here, I don't want to add more layers of hoops for you to jump through. And wherever that lands, I'm really excited to see when you take it. So thank you.
Like I said, I'm really excited about this. My children are really young, totally get it this long-term plan. So that's why it does have that possibility of giving them the option to stay here. That's what I see it.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. We have proposed resolution before us, 1, 2, 3, and amended 4. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? None. Motion carried. Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Staying with us for item 2, Michelle?
Yeah.
I invite Kerry, is it? Yeah. Item 2, adoption of draft brothel control bylaw 2024. Right.
Katoa, I'm happy to take the report as read and turn to questions, but as with all these processes, we'd like to thank all the submitters who time to provide feedback, as well as the hearing panel's time and commitment.
Questions, councillors? No question? Oh, go
Yeah, I just, I don't know whether the officers or whether the chair of the hearing panel just clarify paragraph 19. It says, whilst the panel recognised the recommended option was not supported in the submission, due to making this recommendation that had given consideration to the feedback reflected in the submissions. I just wanted any clarification of that, please, that supports your end result, noting the submissions did not support.
You better done your study, Chair.
As chair of the committee, I wanted to, just shine light on this aspect of it. We had an early indication before council around 3 different options of the size. We knew that we had to strike a balance between giving effect to the PRA, the Prostitution Reform Act, and the community sentiment. And so we are still one of the most restrictive districts in the country, given that we have a bylaw and it's not through the district plan. So the panelists saw it appropriate to do that with sensitivity to both sides and ultimately struck a balance in the middle when it came to the size of CBD.
Can I answer a little bit here too, or not?
No.
Okay. So I see what you're saying now, Lyle, that it wasn't supported by the submissions, but the submissions were so opposite that they also didn't agree on any of the options.
Not unless it was in scope.
Yeah.
So, just a question from me. So how many submissions did we give and how many were actually within the district?
3 Chair, I believe it was in the order of 20 in total. And for that particular question, as has just been pointed out, the responses sat on 2 ends. It was don't support.
No, how many actual submitters were from inside the district?
4 from Wanaka, 3 from Queenstown, 13 from outside the district.
The majority came out of the district. Okay, thank you.
I think in response to your question, Councillor Thompson, I think ultimately, and I think actually Councillor Tucker's outlined that when council will get a variety of views, council's always required, it is submission. It's not a poll, it's not a popularity vote. You're always going to be weighing up the various objectives, and in particular, and as Councillor Tucker's outlined, you're weighing up responding to community sentiment in some instances against the provisions of legislation and finding the right balance. Not always an easy thing, and I think as Carrie's outlined, particularly difficult, and as Melissa's outlined, it's very difficult in this instance.
I'll just open up for questions. Any further questions? Well, we've got an eager beaver here, so I'm going to allow him to move it. Do we have a seconder?
Cody.
Oh, Cody. Yeah. Okay. Discussion.
I will.
Oh no. Well, you'll be.
I'll be last.
Oh, yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, just as I previously indicated when we were discussing this, I don't believe that under the bylaw I supported the option of managing brothels and other small businesses through the district plan. I still believe that, but noting that how the submissions went on this and the hearing panel have heard it all, I make the point I will support what the hearing panel have come up with.
Any discussion? I'll just if your last. No, hang on, your last. I just want to. I'm a little bit uncomfortable how we talk about community sentiment when I raised the issue about how many were actually inside our community, and less than half actually submitted on this. You know, we've got an obligation to represent the district and as councillors. So I do feel a little bit nervous how we say the sensitivities of the community when the majority of the submitters were outside of the district we represent. So, but again, I'm with Lyle here. I'll support the recommendation of the panel. Anyway, yeah.
Thanks. Just a quick comment. I just wanted to congratulate the panel. I thought the decision was really good, and but mostly because you held your deliberations in public, and I just wanted to congratulate you for that.
Guess Lisa want to go?
Oh, Lisa, yeah, okay.
Quick comment. I'd also like to thank the panel. I know it was a really challenging decision to make, and when I look at the outcome of being do nothing to do maximum, there was concern within our community around the unintended consequence of the do maximum being largely undeveloped areas still within our community, and just not being able to future guess what the unintended consequences or implications of that may be. And I know that you responded to concerns around meeting demand and all sorts of nuance in that decision. I know it was a hard one, and I agree that we needed to give some consideration to the Reform Act and providing safe workspaces for every employee or every worker in our community. So I think coming to that middle ground was a really fair consideration in this situation. So, cheers.
And just one point, I just want to respond to Lyle, to Councillor Cox's comment about the potential to deal with it under the district plan as any other small business. Point of difference, particularly in my mind, is the hours of operation and the potential for disruption, particularly in residential zones, at the hours of the night. So that's where there is a difference to that in my mind. So as the panel, we determine that this bylaw was the best way to deal with or to allow for this. So it's right to it.
2 meetings in a row. Kevin, you're actually debating. Well done. Trying to.
This is just in response to your question about the 13 that aren't from the district. Of those 13 submitters, quite a few of them were representing people in the district, even they weren't based in the district.
Thanks. Yeah, just a closing comment that I well done to Cody, because our youngest councillor, and this is his first committee chair, subcommittee chair, that he did a very good job. I listened to some of it, and equally, I think they came to a very pragmatic solution. I had the misfortune of sitting on this hearing 6 years ago when we previously did it, and it is a tricky thing, and I learned a lot. We've taken the approach we took then, I think, is still valid, which is roughly what's been applied. It acknowledges some growth and change, constrains it to appropriate areas, and I think meets the needs of our community in terms of avoiding undue impacts. So, yeah.
Okay, put it to the vote. 1, 2, 3, and 4. All those in favour? Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 3. Approval of Queenstown Lakes District Council submissions. Local water done well. International Visitor Conservation and Tourism Levy. Land transport rules, setting of speed limits, and Otago and Regional Council representation arrangements. Sorry.
Thank you, Davina.
Sorry.
Davina.
Nice to meet you, Dalvina. I don't think you've actually presented before at full council.
No, it's fine.
Oh, here we go. Be kind councillors. Away we go.
So we have a report for a retrospective approval of 3 submissions and approval of an upcoming submission. I would like to take the table, happy to take the report as read, but there are 2 corrections. One is to the context, which should refer to 3 submissions, and paragraph 27 should refer to MB RC. So I'd like to open to questions.
Questions, councillors?
Have we spoken to any of these, and any insights? How did that process go? Just any comments?
So we haven't, as an oral submission.
As an oral submission, yeah.
So no, we haven't to any of these. Local water done well, we did ask to, but there was no opportunity given.
That's great. Sort of second question, it's just obviously there's a lot of stuff coming from Central, and there's no time frame for submissions. Just wondering, well, question, and not related directly to this, but is there a way that we could, as a council, because we can't hear from our community, the timeframes are too short, but is there a way that we could highlight the submissions opportunities that are coming out of central government on these bills, or on our website? I know we
respond.
Yeah, exactly, because they're all coming out. Not a lot of people follow the bills and what's coming out or have notice of that. So I was just wondering, I know all our submissions are obviously on the website, but would there be a way to use the website to highlight what's coming out of central government just
Would there be an issue with that?
Through your chair, so I'm clear that you're suggesting council promote a consultation occurring to the public to enable them.
even just notifying, I mean, it doesn't need to be encouragement or education or any big jump, just saying, this is up for submissions at the moment, we're writing ours, if you want to, you know, this is your time frame. Here's the information. Look, it might be a lot of work for not a lot of gain, I don't know, but it's just supporting democracy where maybe where central government isn't.
So I'll take that up with the chief executive, it's an operational matter.
Yeah,
We
that's
can
fine.
have a discussion about that.
Kevin?
I just had a quick question on the submission for the draft land transport law for setting the speed on page 167. It says submission to government entity. Is that which government entity is it? Does it have a name? Is it Ministry of Transport? Or just says submission to government entity on the output. Which that was okay. Nice.
No, sorry. That's just.
Okay. Any further questions, councillors? You happy to move? Seconder? Investor? Open for discussion?
Just a brief comment from me. A brief comment from me that look, the speed setting one is a bit of a mess for us. We did what was required of us a couple of years ago by government and went through a very painful process of adhering to their speed guideline and making changes. We're now being at the whim of another government being asked to make changes at great expenses to our community and to go through that process again. So I would just point out that government need to stop tinkering with local road control and let us get on with the job.
Okay.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you. I'd just like to comment on the idea around us promoting the timelines and things around central government submissions. I just think we've got an element of caution around submission fatigue on our own matters of business and urgency, and to be frank, that's central government's job to drum up that democratic voice around their own pieces of work. I'd like to see us really keep our eyes on our swim lane of how do we increase our submissions and community engagement around our specific business. So I hear Councillor Fleming's very honourable and aspirational intent of getting more submissions to central. I just think we've got to focus on our stuff. Thanks.
Okay.
Local order done well. I empathise with those people that had to write that because you had such a short time frame to get that in. So I just wanted to voice that one in case anyone's actually listening. Secondly, when we talked about the international visitor levy topic there and raising that, I don't think I gave feedback at the time, but it occurred to me that actually there's a huge and high domestic tourism volume that comes to our district, which would not be accounted for in the IBL, which should have been another point that we possibly could have made. Anyway, too late.
Well, through Mr. Chair, just following on from the comment about government stinkering, or the previous government did tinker, and I, that's why most probably do have a change of government, and the fact that we've got guidelines based on real evidence rather than based on ideology. I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment. Sorry, I take your point, Lisa. I just the issue for me is that we're writing submissions and we're agreeing them retrospectively, and we obviously don't take any input from our community, and I understand why, because the timeframes are ridiculous. And thanks for stating that in the submissions, but it would just give people an opportunity to see what we're doing, what we're submitting on, and I think that could be helpful for the organisation, but it also just, in lieu of them being able to contribute to our submissions and our thinking, it would enable them to at least have their voice. So that's my thinking around that. It's sort of mitigating the fact that we can't consult with our community despite the fact that we're advocating for specifics. The only other thing I want to say is thank you for really high quality submissions. I think they're great, and I think I like in the strong language. We're standing up for ourselves in the community, and I think that's great. So thank you.
Just along the same vein, I'm just looking at our submissions on the website, which obviously features there that people can see. So a really easy way to just involve people is to just daylight that particular link to our Facebook page, which I think probably a lot of people, like in discussions with our community, I don't think people realise how much we advocate to central government. So that in and of itself would be enough to engage those people that want to be involved in it. But again, thank you for all your work, because yeah, it's just relentless, and there's more of them coming all the time. So, and different versions of the same thing. So thank you.
Councillors, just before I put it to the vote, I just want to highlight the ORC representation review. I think out of all the 4 submissions, that's probably the main critical one for governance going forward for this district. And I'm a little bit surprised I haven't heard your views at this table, considering that is of critical governance nature for this district. Look, I fully support us going for 3 in our own what they call constituencies, yeah, in this area. I think there'll probably be a further discussion depending on what ORC decide in their outcome. And I think I expect councillors to have a pretty robust debate regarding a pathway forward once ORC make a decision. So I'll leave it at that. You got any further? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. All those against? None. Motion carried. Item 4, inclusionary housing. Take it away.
I'll give a brief introduction. So the purpose of this agenda item is to bring to you the report and recommendations of the Independent Hearings Panel for the Inclusionary Housing Variation to the proposed district plan. The purpose of the item is to seek a decision from Council on the variation. The panel has made recommendations in its report on the submissions received. However, their recommendation is that the variation be withdrawn. The key reason for the panel's recommendation is that in the panel's view, further work is needed to evaluate alternative options to inclusionary housing. These alternatives include the use of rates or development contributions to fund affordable housing, restricting short-term letting, or enabling more housing. I note that Council is currently undertaking significant work to address housing issues, including through implementing the Joint Housing Action Plan and through the District Plan Review. There's one correction to the agenda report that I'd like to table, and that's at paragraph 31 of the agenda report. And it's around financial implications. And this sentence should read that the preferred option would not include an appeal process and the associated budget. We have our legal counsel, Nick Whittington, online if there's questions, and I'm happy to take any questions now.
So just for clarification, it's saying would not include. Yeah.
That's right.
Questions, councillors? Anything?
Thanks. Just reading through the decision, it's just a little bit concerning to have it suggested that the council had considered the rating option. So I just is there any comment as to why it was put to the commissioners that we had considered that option? On what basis was that made? Because that reflects on us.
So that option was put forward through the submissions that were received.
And it was mentioned in here that the councillors around the table had considered the rating option. I was in the room for all of that over the process of it, and the councillors did not consider the rating option. It was consistently suggested that it was not a viable option. I'm just concerned that the commissioners have received that advice, and I'd just like someone to speak to it.
So the rating option was considered in an early legal options paper that was appended to the Section 32 report in the notification package. And I think that's what the panel was referring to.
So my concern is that a program of work was developed I don't know what my question is here, so I'll just leave that. I'm just going to say that it should have been considered early in the process before the variation was developed, and we weren't given that option. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll talk to it later. There's one other question, and it's more positive and about moving forward. Obviously, there's a lot of options detailed in the report that we could pursue if we want to improve the affordability of housing in the district. Has a plan been worked out? What's the time frame for looking in depth at these issues and pulling things together? Have we thought about that, or if we haven't thought in any depth, at what point will we? So we have work and train around through the urban intensification variation, which addresses one of the options. So that's to, and that variation hasn't been heard yet, but that would be to enable more plan-enabled capacity around housing. That's in terms of the options that the commissioners have raised, including rates, either general or targeted, to raise money for the Housing Trust, and in terms of another variation to deal with residential visitor accommodation, perhaps this time with more evidence so that we could potentially hold our ground through the process. Those and other options that have been mentioned, where are we at in terms of at least getting a time frame for considering them and letting the community know what we're doing about those things?
I'll speak to that.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously we have the joint housing action plan, so that's something that's been adopted, that has a program associated with. Some of the matters that are raised in that are part of that particular
Is it
program.
still joint?
At this stage, it's still joint, yes. And I think in terms of where we go to with future variation, I think it's until this decision's made, we've really not turned our mind to what would be a work program to address that. And that's something we'll need to take guidance from council on about what they want to basically continue to do in the space and whether what level of funding they're prepared to commit to that.
Brendan?
Thank you.
Yeah, so my question really, well, firstly, I'll ask, what were the hearings panel delegated to do?
Yes, so the hearings panel was delegated to make recommendations on the submissions that were received to either accept, reject, or accept in part of the submissions.
Okay, so why do we have a recommendation that tells us to withdraw the variation rather than accept, reject, or accept in part?
So as part of the recommending report, there is a table attached at the end of an appendix that has the accept, reject position. But ultimately the panel has recommended withdrawal. But if a clause 10 decision was to be made on the plan change, then that position insofar as accepting or rejecting submissions in that table could be used by council in terms of a decision.
Okay, so and I know where this is going, but and I'll make a comment. I apologise for speaking at it.
Yeah, mate, look, I hear your frustration, councillor, and if we can keep it to discussion, because I'll give you a full hearing and discussion.
I'll leave it for discussion. Yeah. You've answered my question, and I'll speak after that.
Any further questions? All right.
Excuse me, through the panel, thank you. I'd like to get your comment on, the panel commented read the most appropriate versus just inappropriate tool or lever for us to utilise here. And I want to understand our options for what we were using and enabling those to remain in place. Could you speak to that for me?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Thank you for the question. The strategic evidence that I wrote for the hearing, it explained a lot of the work that the council is doing in terms of addressing housing issues, and it had explained that inclusionary housing was one piece of what was basically a jigsaw puzzle of approaches, and that's how we had articulated it in our approach, was that inclusionary housing is one piece of the puzzle in terms of a range of methods to address housing issues. And that's how we had articulated it in the evidence that we put before the panel.
And so with this being still a work in progress, are there means for us to retain what we were using?
In terms of the work done on the variation or the.
On how we were prior to this variation, how we were creating developer agreements on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, so the recommended option is to, in the agenda report, is to withdraw the variation. And one of the benefits of that option would mean that a decision isn't made on it, and the current operative district plan provisions that relate to community and affordable housing would remain in play. They won't have been reviewed, and so they will still be option.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, we've got a recommended resolution before us, 1 through to 4. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Cody. I will second. I'll open it up for discussion. Go for it.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Look, this issue around affordable housing has been described in many ways over the years, but certainly has been probably the greatest challenge in our district. You know, we have been through a range of options around how to address this, and as was described, this is one of the tools that could have been used to help address affordability and the great work and success of the Housing Trust in our district. Now, look, this is an imperfect solution, but it was part of a strategic approach to addressing one of the greatest issues out in our district, and one that, you know, it touches on these things like the, you know, will our kids have jobs? Will they be able to afford here? Can they afford to stay here? Can the businesses afford to have people working in our district, you know, and you know, for their employees to stay? And we understand that problem extremely well. Unfortunately, we're left on the back foot again without any solution to, you know, touching on the point, we don't have any leverage now. The SHA process and the fast track process provided us with some leverage around providing, and we've been successful in doing that. Those things don't exist anymore. The earlier development agreements were up and down success. Some of them haven't been adhered to, some have been successful. You know, we were trying to lever and move on, keep working in that direction. At this point in time, there is no future opportunity for us to require any additional land to be given to the Housing Trust, and that puts their work at significant risk. Yes, we've been successful at this point, but there's no future to that without some of these tools. And as I said, imperfect. I'm really uncomfortable with the recommendation, because I think it was outside the delegation of the hearings panel to recommend that we withdraw it. Equally, if we were faced with a decline or reject or accept recommendation, that would equally put us in a tricky position. Well, sorry, an accept one might be okay, but a reject one would put us in an equally tricky position, because we'd probably have to withdraw it anyway. So unfortunately, this is where we're at. I think it's an incredibly unfortunate situation. We're left without the tools to move forward, and I think the recommendation of the panel to recommend we withdraw it is outside their mandate. That's all I've got to say.
Mary? Thanks, Mr. Chair. I support withdrawing the inclusionary housing proposal, and the reasons that I have for that are that such a charge will inevitably be passed on by the developer, and making it akin to a Robin Hood tax, where potentially resulting in a neighbour subsidising neighbour. You know, and I don't think that's neither fair nor equitable. But I first looked at property here in 1975, and compared to most other places in New Zealand, this district was very expensive.
I appreciate the staff have put a lot of effort into this. But the affordable housing challenge is not new to our district, and it will continue to be a challenge.
Thank you. So, you know, the variation was designed, really, it wasn't designed to address the long-term structural issues. It was one tool, as we've discussed. I've been really torn on this personally. I did support it previously in 2022 when we put it forward. And I guess I just wanted to kind of touch on this tax argument that we keep coming back to. You know, taxing the developer will just push the cost onto others. Whilst I understand that, I think principally if we take that approach, like philosophically, we could argue that point for any tax. And so what this does enable is for us as a district to set a precedent that would, you know, if it were to ever become implicit in our district plans and part of the process, it wouldn't be seen as something that's just passed on, it would just be part of the process. So I think, you know, again, I think our staff and our community and our council have worked really hard on this for a long time. I think that there's loads of opportunities that weren't perhaps touched on with the hearing panel, which, like the opportunities for the housing trust itself to leverage borrowing because of what we enable. So there's a lot of other benefits that I think were kind of not really touched on enough and not considered enough. And I think withdrawing, it's a bit like Councillor Smith said, it's, you know, we're between a rock and a hard place, it's kind of out of scope, but at the same time it essentially kind of defers our position and enables us to still think about this case by case. So yeah, that's what's got it. Thank you.
Well, through the chair, I just have to acknowledge this has been going on for a while, obviously between two councils, previous council, this council. Huge amount of work on by the staff to progress this. But I do believe we do have to respect, as we always do, we did it for the Brothels one, the hearing panel, they ones that heard all the submissions. And we've got to take out of that decision the things that will assist us as we go on our next step to address some of the issues that this was aiming to address. So yeah, I acknowledge that, yes, the recommendation, the panel, whether they had to withdraw or not, but hey, again, the thing is, it's our call to whether withdraw it, and I support withdrawing it. It gives us that option then to progress with what we've already got and more flexibility in what we had to do. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just make a comment, just for clarity, and I appreciate the comments that councils have made, but we're very careful that actually the inclusionary zone provisions were not a tax. We were able to identify that there was an effect created by further development in terms of affordability, which we were addressing. A tax would be a more consistent approach if you were using the Ratings Powers Act, because that effectively is a form of taxation, but the provisions were not a tax. So I just really want to make that clear in case people get confused about what we're doing.
It's very different anecdotes rather than.
Yeah.
That's a forgettable one. As someone who actually lives in a housing trust and was helped by the housing trust, this is obviously a disappointing result in terms of a tool that could have been used to help. It was never going to solve all of the problems. The problem is so huge, not one thing will solve it. So I guess for me, it's a little bit disappointing that we can't progress this any further at this point, but hopefully it just gives us an opportunity to start again, to find some more tools that work.
Thank you, Mel. Lisa?
Thank you, through the chair, and hey, to the team that gave this a shot, thank you, because I know it was it was an out there kind of call, and it was an election issue for many of us at the time around the debate on this topic. I want our housing trust to feel heard today, and I respect Julie's disappointment and her team and the 1,300 or so families and people that are on our wait list for housing in our district, and how disappointing this outcome is for all of them. I understand the trust recently held 3 information sessions just on our Jock Street allocation and only invited those on the wait list and had over 100 turn up at each of those information sessions. And there's going to be a few very relieved families, but hundreds of disappointed families in the next allocation of our housing. So my concern around this is that we've got to get back in the game as quick as we can and use as many levers as we can to help support sustainable housing, whether that's still to be referred to as affordable. I think we're fast losing any kind of statement around affordable, but sustainable housing for the people that we have here in our community. And therefore the only option that I see at this point is to withdraw and to go with option 3, where our existing policies still remain in effect and enable us to try and take some action and some forward progress while we still work on the other levers around addressing what is our biggest challenge, which is housing our people. So I really thank you all for giving it a shot. I know you got a lot of challenge around just fronting up and doing that, so thank you. And Julie and all of those families, I'm really sorry.
Okay, we'll go Nikki. Since you're mover, I'll go just before you.
Thank you. Look, I support withdrawal for a couple of reasons, and I'm really pleased that option allows us to keep those policies in place that we already have. That's great. But really, I want this to be about moving on as quickly as we possibly can with using these other tools. They're not scary tools. I'm still getting the vibe that rating it's kind of scary. I don't understand why it was put to the commissioners that it was considered what was politically unpalatable. And my question is, to who was it politically unpalatable? Because it wasn't to me. And I discussed that option at length, and especially as we got further down the process. And it was always considered too difficult, and I don't understand why. I do feel, as the report says, that we make up our mind about the path that we want to go down, and we continue down it, often without considering all practical options. And it's not just this, it's across the board. And I think we need to remain much more open to all the possibilities, and we need to hear from the community on all possibilities before we commit to a track. Because we don't know everything. And I read something recently, I think it was Taiwan, and they had built trust back in that place, and they spoke about humble policy making, where we don't think we have the answers, and we go out to the community and we test it. Anyway, what I'd like to see us do is look at that rating option. I never understood why we wanted to put a I'm not, for lack of a better word, apologies, my tax, wrong word, but on part of the solution, because obviously residential housing is part of the solution, and we had left visitor accommodation and commercial activity out of that mix. To me, we should be putting a targeted rate on those activities that drive or generate the need for affordable housing. That makes so much more sense, and to me would avoid all sorts of unintended consequences down the track. So look, thank you, it's done. I hate to think how much we spent on it, but let's be open to the decisions, and let's just crack on with looking at that rating option and reconsidering whether we can do a variation on RVA, and get the data, get the government to sort the data. Thank you, despite everything, thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Look, I'll be quick here. I share on the Deputy Mayor's frustrations with how the panel have presented their decision. Look, in my position, you always got to look on the bright side. And for the bright side, for me, is the panel found inclusionary zoning lawful, completely lawful under the Resource Management Act. And the panel also generally found that the council's economic case for the variation was valid. So for me, that's a very good starting point for whatever happens next in this journey. I push back a little bit on what Nikki was saying about testing it with the community. With all the flaws that the RMA has, it is the one piece of legislation that is highly participatory. anyone can submit. I think that this process actually has been tested, and the result of that test is before us today. So, withdrawing under clause 8, look, I'm not going to go down the legalese of it all because I think we all got bombarded with it. It's interesting that people say it's dead. It actually gives us the option to go again, but that will be of a council decision at a later date, whether it's this council or a council into the future. So with that, I support the withdrawal. I am looking at it as half glass full and a very good base to start with the work that we will continue to do to address an issue that is of high importance to this district. So I'll leave it with that. Cody?
Thank you. Great to try. I'm always failing is trying, and trying is awesome. So speaking from a lot of my friends who have tried helping into housing, it's no secret it's not a big issue and it's not a silver bullet thing. I feel like I'm not going to labour anyone else's points because they're well spoken, but mine's probably just going to be about telling our story. We're attacking this from lots of different angles. Earlier today was endorsed an economic diversification plan that's about lifting wages so that the disparity between housing and wages is closing, and there's a lot of approaches that we can take on this. So I think to bring the community with us, and to Councillor Glading's point, the humility of going, it's a big thing, big hairy thing to tackle. This is everything we know, and let's try and figure it out in every way possible from here. But great effort. We're always out there, always giving it a go. So I'm proud that we're constantly fighting a good fight.
Okay, all right. Vote. Moved by Councillor Cody and myself. All those in favour? Aye. Aye. All those against? None. Motion carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Item 5, CE's report.
Mr Mayor, as was noted, part 2 has been withdrawn, and the data around that. So effectively, there was really one item. So we've got noting the contents of the report, and then approving the vesting of 2 reserves, and one in Henley Downs, one in Hayes Creek, and then the final resolution of how those reserve improvement contributions get used. So pretty straightforward.
Questions, councillors? No questions? Do we have a mover?
Item 4, it relates to the reserves that are referred to in item 3. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Discussion? Put it to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Right. Thank you all. I move that we move into public excluded. Do I have a signal? Thank you, Gavin. All those in favour? Aye. Aye. Those against? None. Motion carried. Thank you.